Being on our little mini getaway, I didn't have time to prepare all the headline stuff. But I don't know if you guys are watching international news. There right now is wars and rumors of wars going on right now. And it's all, United States has been in the past the world's policeman. We've had forces all over the world. We have naval forces all over the world, air forces all over the world. And right now, the United States is being tested like we haven't seen in some time, certainly in the last 4 years, because of the unpredictability of Trump. No one really pushed him because they thought he was a crazy man. They didn't have a book on him. But with Biden, they've got a book that's decades and decades long. They've got him figured out. They know where his buttons are, and they're going to push and push and push. And that's what we're seeing in the headlines now. China live drill attacks on U.S. carriers while sending a record 25 warplanes into Taiwan airspace. So they're testing the current president of the United States. Both Russia and China warned Biden at the same time to stay out of the Ukraine. And I don't know if you've been watching the buildup there, but supposedly there's 70,000 Russian troops on that border. And Taiwan, we just read about that. So we're seeing now international tensions that we haven't seen for a while between the major world powers. So that is going on. Ignore the big human organ thing there. United States is thinking about splitting up. I don't know if you saw this one out in Idaho. They're talking about adding portions of Oregon, California, and Washington. That's interesting. I'll go down here to this one. Biden to announce Afghan troop exit on September 11th. Never good to broadcast to the enemy.
We're sending that engraved invitation to all the
You never do that, but I can't speak any further on that one. I'm too close.
See how well it worked on the border.
Yeah.
Now, wonder if they'll get T-shirts.
And then the Biden administration gives valuable defense contracts to China. So you really have to like that one. Let's see. Here is former Pentagon advisor. Arabs, and we've talked about this one over and over again. Arabs are looking to Israel to replace America as the leader in a war on Iran. Why is that? Well, again, we've had that change in leadership. We once were solid friends with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries. Now it's all questionable because Biden is making peace overtures towards Iran. So they're not going to sit idly by in the Middle East under an umbrella of Iranian nuclear power. So we know that's not going to happen. Here's an interesting one, I thought. Tulsi Gabbard warns Biden to bring nuclear holocaust with burning flesh. Biden is an interesting character, and we don't know, he might overreact because he's being questioned. And also, he's, in my mind, he's not the Biden he once was. So he's older, and there's a prophecy in Zechariah, there's a prophecy in Ezekiel 39, also where it looks as if people melt and nuclear war, so she's bringing that. You rarely see something like that in the headlines. So people are thinking about these things, aren't they? Let's see if there's, here's one. Iran fires missile at Israeli-owned ship near UAE. So these tensions are continuing, and that's what the big thing in the news is now. The rest of it is, your usual crazy politics. But
I just went up to the nuclear facility in Iran that got hit.
Yes.
Paragraph up.
Yeah, did I miss that one?
Yeah, you just passed it.
I'm looking at these lights.
One more. Right there.
Okay, yeah. So, I don't know if you read about this one. This is a number of days ago. I thought it interesting that Iran says, we are ready to enter into the next stage of our nuclear program. And we're going to have these centrifuges, and we're going to be able to produce X number of more. The next day, the facility is hit beneath the ground with a weapon. They don't know what happened. Some call it a electromagnetic pulse. Some people call it different things. We really don't know. There's a lot of speculation, but they were hit. The Iranians went crazy, saying it's an act of war on the part of the Israelis. So again, Israel is not going to sit there and let Iran develop nuclear weapons. So this is all bubbling on the surface. So
and Israel did not take credit for it.
no,
It's
they're
a mystery. They still don't know who did it. Iran's just blaming Israel for doing it.
Now, I ask you, as studiers of the Bible, is this something that we can anticipate seeing more of in the future or less of in the future? More.
Birth pains.
Yes, that's true. And I will also, I don't know if you remember from last week, we went over this verse, but this verse should stick because, again, one of the great biblical prophecy that everything hangs upon is Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. And in verse 26 is the gap that we live in right now. We talked about this last week, 2 weeks ago. The Messiah shall be cut off, crucified, but not for himself, but for who?
Us.
Yes, he was crucified for us, the entire church, everybody on earth that calls on the name of the Lord and seeks him. He died for them, if they but seek him. The people of the prince that shall come, and who destroyed in 70 AD Jerusalem and the temple? Remember that? Titus, exactly. That's the person. The Roman Empire, of course. Vespasian was the emperor. Titus, his son, was the general. So the Flavian family went in there and did this. So they're the ones that destroyed the city and the sanctuary. The prince who shall come is the Antichrist. Very good. And here's where we're at right now. After that, we have a gap. That's 70 AD. And we've been in this sentence since that time. The end, therefore, shall come with a flood, and unto the end, war, desolations are determined. So we've been living in that gap since 70 AD, because it shall not end until this covenant with death. And we'll talk a little bit more on that later. But I wanted to go over here in Matthew 24. And you can turn to Matthew chapter 24 if you would. We'll read a little bit into that. And of course, I don't think I've ever given a class on the Olivet Discourse. We've talked about it numerous times. But we really need to do that justice one day. But I'm going to pluck out a couple of verses from Matthew 24 right now to show where we're at in this timeline and why we shouldn't be surprised by any of this stuff that's going on right now, because Jesus talks about it. Of course, he's sitting there. He had just gone down to the temple, and the disciples came to show him, the building of the temple. And Jesus said, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another, and that shall not be thrown down." And of course, when did that happen? We just talked about it, 70 AD. So this links itself to Daniel chapter 9, verse 26. And later on, we'll see Jesus link it again to verse 27 of chapter 9. But anyway, his people, the disciples went back with him and privately asked, "When shall these things be, and what shall be the signs of the coming and the end of the world?" And Jesus answered to them and said, "Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." Does that happen? Oh yeah, it happens all the time. The Muslim religion is a whole false religion. So that's in there. Also the Mormon religion have all come after Christ's time. And this is where we're at today as well. "And ye shall hear wars and rumors of wars. See that you not be troubled." Are we troubled? It's hard not to be sometimes. when you look at the news. But again, we have to keep our eyes on the prize, just as Paul did, and fight that good fight. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nations, and kingdoms against kingdoms, and there shall be famines and pestilences. Boy, we've had one last year, didn't we? Still in it. And earthquakes in diverse places. And these are all just the beginning of sorrows. So when does that end? And that's the big question when you look at the commentators and you look at the various religious groups, is where do you break and how do you break this up? And a lot of people say this certain sections are for the Jews and certain sections are for Christians. And I would like to do that sometime, but I don't want to do it tonight. But you need to think about that, and we'll go into this, and you can go read it on your own. But I'll give a class on this one day, but we really don't have time to get into all the meat of this. But just know that we're in the sorrows. Nobody knows what's going to come of this. Nobody knows if Ukraine is going to have a war with Russia. Nobody knows if China is going to invade Taiwan. Nobody knows. And I will tell you that whatever happens, God will allow it to happen. And we will suffer whatever consequences there are associated with it. No good things come from these types of wars of aggression. And this is going to continue until the good Lord comes back and beats all those plowshares, or all those swords into plowshares. And only He is the one that's going to be able to do that.